All right. Hello. For me, it's been a while. So hello, everyone. Sorry that I don't know if you heard my dog. He's just it's Saturday. Hello. So welcome to week 7, right? I think it's week 7. How is everybody feeling? We are at the home stretch. We're almost there. Um, oh, thanks, Tina. Yeah, I missed you guys too. I was like, how are my Collabies doing? It's been a while. Um, but yes, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, we're just going to talk about what your plans are for the next week before the big demo. And Jen will be doing another presentation module on communication, I believe it was. And then any other questions, concerns, and then we could tackle it. Oh, hi, Maria's dog. But yeah, so I guess we can start by I'll hand over the mic to the Collabies to see, what your plan is. How has it been so far this past week? What's the plan? I would love to know. I want to be in the loop. So anybody want to take the mic?
Weston, can I nominate you to take the mic because you have really stepped up and kind of been like a little bit of a de facto group leader, I feel like this week. If
Sure.
if you
I
don't
can
mind. Sorry to put you
I
on the
can talk
spot.
through some stuff. Um, yeah, so we had a really great meeting midweek where we talked about um, issues that we wanted to tackle before the end, and that included a couple of like feature type things, and it also included like a strong preference to work on some styling and get things looking how we wanted. So we can talk through a bit of both of those things. Let me go ahead and I guess I'll share my screen if that's possible.
Oh, hold on. Sorry. Maybe hold on. I think, give me a second. I wish there was like, okay. Try again, Weston. You should be
Okay.
able to share your screen now.
All right. So, go away. Okay. We had our to-do list where we were tracking the various things that we were wanting to the additional functionality. And after we met, we kind of synthesized that and some of the talking points into a list of tickets that we wanted to do. And the highlighted means that they've actually been added as tickets at this point. So the top issues here are more of features or programmatic changes, and then these are all style things down here. So high level, the things that we talked about were implementing MUI, because after some back and forth, we landed on trying to use MUI rather than vanilla CSS. So just getting that dependency added and integrated, creating an alert component. So one place where users can look to expect to see feedback, positive or negative, move add item component into the list component. So this one was interesting. We were thinking about like, do we want users to toggle back and forth between those two pages? And one thought was that it's kind of laborious to go to another page to add an item and then come back to your list. So we were looking at making the add item not a view, but a component that's nested inside of list that renders at the top whenever you push the add button. And then uncheck list item. And then a stretch goal for us, and something that Tina expressed a lot of interest in working on, is implementing a fuzzy search. And that's one that we wanted to check in with y'all about and see if that's I think the term you used was t-shirt size, if we can, if that's something that's we can get to. And then a couple of high level styling things, styling the iDatum dialog, the radio buttons and dialog box and all that, styling the nav bar, styling the home page, which Arniqua is super excited about, and then styling the list item itself. so that's high level what we talked about. I can share, we had a Miro board. Well, first of all, I can't see everyone right now. Does anyone have any questions at that point? Okay.
I think Yolanda, were you talking?
Yeah, I realized I was on mute, but I was about to say no, no question, and then
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I didn't want to interrupt.
I'm gonna move you all to my other screen so I can see you. Perfect. Okay. So Tina, do you want to talk through some of your thoughts and ideas? How do we want to approach the mood board conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I thought that we were all kind of supposed to throw in, whatever ideas onto this Miro board. And so yeah, I just threw out some possible, like, hey, we could have like a lemon theme, or we could have a like ocean theme or whatever. So those were just kind of like general concepts, not actual like, here's what it would look like on the homepage, or here's what it would look like on mobile or whatever. And so yeah, so that was just kind of like my understanding of what we were supposed to do, but then we kind of got into the group, and Weston had these like already kind of fleshed out wireframes. So I don't think we need to spend like a whole lot of time on the on like how we ended up, landing on the other one. But why don't you go back to to yours?
Okay.
Since that's where we're going from here.
For the record, I really liked my octopus shopper and would have been pleased as punch if that's the way we went. Yeah, one uh I had kind of tossed out this image a while back of a honeydew, and Arniqua had pitched in and said she liked the play on words and liked the color palette. And so I did a little bit of wireframing in Miro, and mapped out a couple of potential, like how it might look, but also a couple of ideas of additional features. We don't need to spend too much time on that. I think once we had landed on using Material UI, I wanted to look at what it would look like to do to use those actual components, the MUI components. So I made this mock-up in Figma, and this top one is looking at what it would look like if we used the elevated paper component for the different sections. And then down below here is just using the divider lines. But this is showing that alert, the alert component here in this space, and then is showing an add button down here. It could be at the top if it made more sense. But the idea is that you push the add button and the add list item dialog expands and pushes the to-do list or the shopping list down. And then when you confirm this, it shrinks back up. Or you can, I think this is a toggle button, so you can push plus to add, and then it turns into an X and it goes away. So that's kind of where we had ended up at the end of talking about styling. And so yeah, super, I sent out a link to this, super open to people changing layout of things or look and style of things. And I also, Arniqua brought up the point that at one point we were talking about honeydew versus honeydew. Also totally cool with either. So is there anything anyone else has to add to that? That's kind of like the high level overview of the direction we're going. Did I miss anything, y'all?
No, great job.
I really like that pun on words, honey do instead of
Yeah.
honeydew. I like
That's
that.
super cute. Melons are my favorite. I dropped a chat. Melons are my favorite. So I'm very happy and pleased to see this theme. For one quick follow-up question, this plan looks great. I really appreciated how you all kind of took the mood board theme, landed on a theme, and then have some mock-ups. My only question here is that, and I think Yolanda and I were talking about this, there are a lot of tickets that are up and issues that have been created. And next week seems like it's a shorter week because of Thanksgiving and everything like that. So do you all kind of have a short list of like MVP goals? So what are you all familiar with the term MVP? Okay. So speak up if you don't know, but basically I just want to, or we would like to get a better idea of what you think the MVP is here. And I think this week I saw you all tackled like implementing material UI into the project and things like that. But just want to make sure that don't get overwhelmed going into Thanksgiving.
Totally. Yeah, does anyone want to speak to, like, I think we had kind of ordered the tickets in the to-do list in terms of, I think that there was some prioritization there. I think I heard from folks that there were kind of things that people were interested in tackling, but that overall people were really interested in styling and making sure that like it functions at this point. So making sure that it at least looks somewhat polished, and then implementing some of those stretch items that are like more functionality. So the MUI thing, I think, ended up being a priority just because it was, if we're going that route, it was a blocker for a lot of the styling issues. So
Okay. Yeah, and have a lot of you used Material UI before, or is this the first time kind of thing?
I have not, but I had, when we were talking about it, I've been interested to learn. I mean, I've had like a little bit of exposure to it, so I know kind of what it is, but yeah, like I kind of voted in favor of it because I would like to learn more, and yeah, that's.
Yeah, I think for me as well, when I was reviewing the code, just making sure you guys don't feel overwhelmed because it is a holiday next week. People might be traveling, spending time with family, and I don't want y'all to feel like you have to get all of this done by next week, Saturday, since that's a big demo. So if you guys can meet up, top 3 like must be done items, right? If styling is like just the main thing, go hard on the styling, and then you could worry about the other extras. I really do love putting, the add item and then the list into one. I really like that streamline, but I just want to make sure, if hiccups come up because you guys are moving those components and then you're running short on time, I don't want you to burn the oil at midnight trying to get things done, right? So
totally.
I just want, if styling is your thing, and I really love the mood board, really cute. I love it. So kind of as a team say, all right, worst case scenario, what would we like to present? And then focus on those ticket items because when I was reviewing last night, I was like, oh, I see a lot of issues that's being created. And that's great because it keeps you guys in check. But then I'm just so concerned that, Thanksgiving, traveling, and just I just worry. But I just want to make sure as a team you are all on the same page as well. And I don't want, because one person may not be traveling, they say, oh yeah, I could take on that task. And I don't want them to feel like, oh, that extra pressure, like I have to get it done because nobody else can do it because everybody's busy. So just kind of keep that in mind. And it is like what Jen said, just MVP. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be like polished finish. Just show a nice style to it. Make sure that when you present it, it's like, okay, this is what it looks like. It's cool. And then later on as a group again, you all could definitely improve on it, MVP 2.0. So, and then if you want to, I think Andrew would be like thrilled to have another demo, like a couple months down the line, like, hey, we met up again. This is our new version of it. And I think he'll be thrilled because, it shows that you guys are having a lot of fun working together and then revamping or not revamping, improving that product. So, but yeah, that's just kind of my little 2 cents tidbit. And then Weston or team, I noticed a little hamburger on your Figma board. Are you guys going to make a button for that? You know how it says honeydew and there's just like a little
Menu.
menu bar. I just saw it and I was curious. I was like, oh, I wonder if they're gonna, I don't want you guys to add more stuff, but I was just wondering if you guys had a plan. If not, no worries. It's just kind of curiosity, right?
It was a placeholder for the moment. There wasn't any plan for it, since we don't really have a functionality at this point of going back to the home page and putting in a different token or an about page. I don't think that we'll actually have that. It was just sort of a placeholder.
Okay. Yeah, no, not a problem at all. I just saw, I'm like, I wonder if they're gonna, I don't want them to add more stuff yet, unless you all really think you could tackle it, and that's that would be good or cool. But I think that's it. I was looking at the code. I don't know if we've addressed this. I was talking with Jen about it. The home button. So once the user is logged in with the token, I could toggle between like the list and the add item, but the home goes, that there's that flicker and it goes back to the list. Were you all planning on doing another, like, was that part of the issue ticket as well? Not a big thing, but I was wondering if you guys probably are aware of it. I've been a little bit clocked out, so I just want to kind of get a bigger picture from your guys' thought process on, will you guys be tackling that? Are you just gonna
Are you
try
talking
and
about
just
when you refresh the list that there's the momentary render of what
yeah, so like, how there's like the home, list, and add item buttons at the very bottom. Once a user sign in, if I try to click on home, it just like, it re-renders the page like really quick. It shows that home. It's like a split second and then it goes back to that list. It's like I don't know I'm not doing the greatest job of explaining, but.
So just for context, this is something that other groups run into as well, because I think the issues never actually, I don't remember if any of the issues actually tell you what you're supposed to do with the home button after you've logged in, or if there is even a home. And so maybe one way to kind of prevent that from happening and users not knowing why this is not going anywhere is probably just conditionally rendering. If you already have a list, then just don't render the home button. So that's one way that other groups have taken care of it in the past. But that might give some more context on why that happens.
But just a heads up, that's just kind of what I noticed yesterday when I was kind of going through it. But other than that, any other questions before Jen does her presentation?
Communication. Although I think this group is already really good with communication, so.
I gotta agree, 100%.
All right.
All right, I'll give the mic to Jen.
Sweet. Can you all, let's see, let me move this over here. Can you all see my screen? Looks good. All right. I like to present in this slide mode. Sorry, I don't do the slideshow mode. I like seeing what things come next. So we're just gonna go with it. All right. So this, I had a brain fart. This presentation is mostly about communication for devs. And I think as we've seen in the past few retros with each other, we all feel very strongly that this team has really great communication skills. And so I think this kind of learning module is just to kind of reinforce all the good habits that we've already been doing for the last 7 weeks. So we all know on this team, and we highly appreciate, the communication is key. And so what are the different kinds of communication that devs use on a day-to-day basis? And take a look at that. So the first one up is documentation. I can tell you right now, this can be a highly contested, a highly controversial topic at any company that you join, and I'll explain a little bit more why. But so for the what, why, and how of documentation, it really helps you try to remember what the heck you even did. So for me, I'm a furious note taker. So I like to write down everything I need to do and any like key code pieces and things like that. And sometimes I will publish my notes to the rest of my team so that they kind of have a good idea on how to move forward for a few different things. And then, yeah, writing down, it's kind of like the age old, when you were in school, you take notes. For some people, this doesn't work, but for me, when I write it down, it gets seared into my brain, so I don't forget it. And even if I do, it's there on a piece of paper to remind me. And yeah, it's one of the best things for documentation wise is at my company, we do a lot of like product design and technical design documents. And what's really great about those is that if you're like 2 months into implementing this feature, you forgot why you made this decision to design it this way in the first place, you can go back to those design documents and be like, yes, we discussed this at length, and here are all the comments that we back and forth about this, and then made the final decision about this. And then what's great too is that especially your code base can be changing all the time. New features, there's a lot of old context, new team members show up. So having some sort of documentation there really helps new people just kind of poke around. So we use Notion at my work. And so you can just literally poke around the whole Notion. We don't even section it off to just engineers. Like they can look at all of what capital markets is working on and things like that. And you just poke around to get better context of how everything is running and all the decisions that have been made up so far. We also have a lot of flow diagrams and things like that of when we were originally mapping kind of the problem space. So it helps new people kind of gear up more quickly in the context department. And then it avoids institutional knowledge. So maybe kind of like what we're seeing at Twitter right now, when you have a mass exodus of engineers, a lot of the company's knowledge walks out the door. So you can imagine people who have been working there for 12 years or something like that. There's a lot of, they know that one service, or they know there's that one computer in the closet or the one server in the closet. If you unplug that, everything goes down. But they're the only person that knows like how that works and stuff like that. And so we want to prevent those kinds of things as much as possible. And so always having writing out decisions, writing out context is really helpful to avoid that kind of thing. And also it just kind of, you could say like it democratizes the information to everyone. So no matter what level you're at, everyone has the, even for newer people, they have the tools to help them contribute to the conversation because they understand. And so part of the reason, though, why I say it's highly contested is that the degree to which you document and the style to which you document varies from team to team. So I'm very much a note taker, and I love taking all sorts of notes. I love making Notion documents and things like that. But realistically, for a lot of code, especially new features that are going to be iteratively changed, or like any tech debt that you're consistently changing, it doesn't make a lot of sense to make static documentation because things are always changing and it'll be extra effort to change that documentation. So you'll get teams where they are not very focused on documentation because they firmly believe that the code itself should be self-documenting. And then we'll kind of go over kind of comments in code and things like that as another way that devs communicate. But just so you know, as much as we at Collab Lab really, really love and push for more and more documentation, there are kind of scenarios where that might not be ideal. And documentation is really best served for kind of what I told you, like design documents, context, et cetera, and then also once a feature is mature, like you can see kind of like React Router. Once the feature is mature, you can kind of see all of the information that you need to get up and running with this. So that is the disclaimer I like to write. So I love documentation. A lot of other people like documentation, but you might run into some teams where they will document a lot less, and there might be like pros and cons to why. Quick tips. This is kind of like English class. Similarly, even though there's a technical bent, you write for the person who knows the least. A lot of the time when we're in a technical position, we tend to write a little bit more technically. Oftentimes, the documentation that we write at work also gets used by, let's say, the business side of things or something like that. So make sure you know who your audience is. And then make it look nice. Meaning like you can just skim through it and find the information that you're looking for. And then like I showed, the React Router docs or a lot of the other I'm sure you all have gone through docs and you're like, oh my God, I hate these docs. Just trying to remind yourself what is it that is so difficult to use about them. And then that can kind of help you. And the opposite is true too for docs that you're like, man, I love that doc. It's amazing. I can find whatever I need really fast. So that's kind of the guiding light I use when I write documentation. Pull requests. So I think we've done a pretty good job with pull requests. So we early on we had a kind of GitHub, I think, learning module or like pull requests learning module, and it really everyone has done a really good job with communicating through pull requests. And this is another large part of communicating the small details on a team. So pull requests and reviewing pull requests is how people can see what the heck code you've even written and really kind of take a magnifying glass and make sure that, you're following convention, like there's no code smell there and things like that. But more importantly, this kind of is also where you can communicate for their intention. So a lot of the time our teams will break up a lot of our features into much smaller tickets, and they're very incremental. And sometimes these can take multiple sprints. And so kind of the descriptions that you guys have been writing in PRs are really, really helpful. And you all have done a really good job at creating that context so the reviewer doesn't have to do extra work to try to understand what you're doing. And then that way they can also kind of question your architectural decisions or any other decisions that you've made, since all the context has been laid out and you put it all on the page there. So this is a lot of what you're doing here at Collab Lab, demoing and writing these PRs is kind of excellent receipts for you to bring up in an interview so that you can be like, yes, I have experience working on a development team, and this is our communication style, and this is how I like to review and also how I like to receive reviews, et cetera, et cetera. So now you have more of an opinion there. Okay, what, why, and how? These are very up to your personality. I personally, in PR reviews, I will put GIFs. When I approve them at work, I do put GIFs where it's like approved and stuff like that, or like, I think I put a Batman thumbs up or something like that. Just when every once in a while to break up to the wall of text. And then oftentimes in code reviews, I'll also like, if there is some piece of code that they're rewriting, there's already logic in our common packages, I will link back to the wherever it is, like the permalink. I don't know if you all know, like in GitHub, if you navigate your repo in GitHub, there's 3 dots to the left of all code. You can click that and link a permalink. and it says copy permalink. And so you can actually link to your code base the specific parts. So I can point people to, or people can point to me important snippets that help kind of refactor your code and be like, oh, you don't have to write this logic. This already exists somewhere else. So we yoink that out and replace it with the comment, etc., etc. Self-review. This is really important too. I think this kind of goes hand in hand with when to ask for help kind of a thing. There is a good balance between reviewing your own code and knowing if it's good enough or not, and then asking for a review versus just slapping something out and putting the onus on the reviewer and making them do all the work to kind of proofread your code. So as long as you make sure that you took the time and you know why you made certain decisions and why you did it that way, it makes life a lot easier for the reviewer. So always keep that in mind. And then keep PRs small and narrowly scoped. This is something that's very, very important. I think it's one of the things that I learned when I first joined where I'm currently working at. I was so used to kind of shipping in my own bubble. And so I didn't really have PRs at the previous job. So I could just kind of commit and ship whatever I wanted. But at this job, like, I think some of my biggest PRs are like thousands of lines of code. Like, that is highly, like, I don't know, not recommended, would not recommend to friends. First of all, there's a lot more that can go wrong in there. And then second, can you imagine trying to be the reviewer of like 1,000 lines of code? You are bound to miss something as well. So basically, a skill that I'm actively still trying to cultivate is you have a giant feature and you kind of chunk it out in smaller pieces to make sure that every single line that you contribute gets eyes on it, and making sure that you don't have any mistakes in there. So keep your PR small, y'all. Don't even like just one line changes. It's like, perfect. I don't have to worry that this is gonna break everything. A good PR description is here. Let's see here. This and 404 not found. But regardless, you can use your own repo because I have been very impressed with the descriptions and all the PRs so far. So moving along, comments and code. So this is another, as always, I like to say it depends. So every team is going to have their preference. And you'll notice I like to say it depends a lot because every team has their own style. And I mean, this is kind of the same thing working across any different industry. But with comments and code, some teams hate it and they want 0 comments in the code, which I don't know. Hot take. I think it doesn't really matter because usually the comments get stripped out when you're like building it anyways. But I think a lot of the reason why people hate comments in code is because they've seen it done inefficiently. And what do I mean by that? Is that a lot of people focus a lot on the what the heck this is instead of the why this is here. And so in our code base at work, we have a healthy dose of a little bit of both. We try to document our code by having good naming. But if the naming isn't enough because you don't want a 30-character long name for a function or a method, you still have to give some context there. Also, for example, at work, we have a lot of different methods that might not make sense outside of kind of the context of that module. And so giving context, or like, for example, since we ship PRs in such small increments, giving the context code there, because we're all over the code base. There's like a team of us. So we leave comments kind of with our name, and then this is like in progress, or to do, this is in progress, like blah, 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 or like this will be deleted. Don't use this anymore. We have deprecated tags everywhere. So a lot of that kind of why or what's going on, or this is this way because this library that we use doesn't forward ref, so we have to wrap it in a box, even though this is highly not recommended. So a lot of that kind of stuff, that's the kind of stuff that should belong in the code, the comments. So on stuff that just might get lost if someone else starts working in your code. So yeah, so exactly like what these 2 points say. So self-documenting code is great, but your name can only be so long, and you can't explain that that library doesn't do that yet in the name. So that's kind of 4. Yep, and exactly the same here. Just focus on the why. I think leaving the why, and you don't have to, please do not write essays in your code either. So there's like a good balance, but enough words to convey warnings or whatever that you need to give your team. All right, so now that I've taken the time to kind of go through that, you can kind of see how a lot of the stuff that you all have been doing for the last 7 weeks have really focused and kind of practiced all of the stuff that I just talked about. So do you all have kind of any thoughts or things like that on how you felt the last 7 weeks have gone in terms of communication, and what you liked and what you didn't like and things like that? The floor is now yours. Also, if you have any questions too.
Well, I can just say that I also feel like we've had really great communication in general. One area of struggle for me, well, 2 areas are naming. I feel like naming things is a real art, just because you have to find the balance of being clear and descriptive, but concise. And as y'all know from my Slack communication, I have a hard time being concise sometimes. So I think when I do need to rely on comments and code, it's like the 3rd or 4th draft that ends up in there, because I'm like, okay, shorter. So that's a real growth edge for me, and something that I'm working on.
Yeah, and I mean, some of it is personality too. I'm definitely on the more verbose side as well. And it's really funny when you put my comments up next to some of my other teammates, because they can somehow convey everything in like 4 words, and then here's me with like 4 lines, and I'm like, oh man.
One question I had was, is commenting in line a no-no? So like if you've got a const that's a total of 20 characters, is it poor form to use the double slash following your semicolon and then put a short little comment there, or is it usually best to have it have its own line?
It depends. So for us, a lot of the time, what I like to personally follow, and my team doesn't have a rule on this, but I notice this is what we do too, I think in general. If you have a description for like the whole thing, just put it at the top. But for example, we have very, very large config objects, and occasionally a property or 2 we have questions on and things like that. And typically that's where we put end of line comments, because we wanted to point specifically to that thing. That's kind of, and I don't know, certain teams might have a big more concrete style guide on how they would like you to approach that. That's typically how I approach things.
I really appreciate you bringing up the config objects too on the sort issue, because I feel like doing that well really, like, it got me thinking about just like how if you properly chain properties and you're referencing those, like that can really help with the self-documentation because it is very descriptive, like what you're accessing.
Exactly. So it almost makes your code readable, like not like a book, but basically it really helps give the context that way. Awesome. Well, if there are no other thoughts or questions, I will hand it off to you.
All right. Thank you, Jen. I think a lot of this is really, it depends, right? It depends on the company that you will work for. Everybody has their own rules, kind of like everyone's kitchen is laid out differently. It functions the same, but they have certain rules. So I know in my mom's kitchen, I can't do certain things, or I shouldn't touch or move around because that's her style. So these, having comments in the code, it really depends. Of course, when you start working, you could definitely ask, or you could kind of look at their code and see what people typically do. I know when I started working, I saw how they put description at the very top of the code, just kind of snippet of what's going on. And then they keep track of who's worked on that code. So it's usually by initials and then the date that they worked on or pushed the branch. So, but every company is different. But thank you so much, Jen, for that presentation. Before I, sign off or close this session, any other comments, concerns, questions? You guys have 1 week to go. Just right around the corner. You guys made it. This is it. Please keep in mind of what we discussed earlier today. And then if you have any questions, concerns throughout the week, definitely ping us mentors. We're more than happy to, jump on a call or, help you guys out. So yeah, before I close this out, any other concerns or questions or thoughts? Or you could, or after recording, I could always put it, yeah. Okay, so if there's nothing yet, no, I mean, you guys could always pop up questions later on, so that's good too, but congratulations, you've made it this far, week 7. Woohoo! Can't wait to see the final product. So let me just end this recording.